Hello and welcome to another episode of the work.knits podcast. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If you're a new viewer, thank you so much for clicking on this episode and giving this a shot. Spend a little bit of time with me today, get a sense of what it's like hanging out, and let's see where we go. My name's Lauren, I'm coming to you from England in the United Kingdom, and this is a space where I talk predominantly about knitting, but a little bit about spinning, a little bit about sewing, a little bit about hand dyeing yarn. So it's a little bit of everything, with maybe even some crochet thrown into the mix. So today, picking the camera back up, I am going to refresh my promises to you in terms of schedule. Now, if I post a video, it will be on a Friday. Whether I can make it every 2 weeks or whether sometimes there's a month, you know, it's once a month, let's see, because I'd said before I was going to go back to fortnightly. Life at the moment is just a little bit too busy to make that a reality, and I hate that I have to put the podcast on pause because I really enjoy this space. It's as enjoyable for me as hopefully it is for you. Sharing what I'm knitting, the chat that happens after it, the catch up over on Instagram too. So it's sad, but it's the way it is, and I think I'll feel less sad about it if I'm not putting quite so much pressure on myself to bring them fortnightly. So, all that being said, delighted to be here today. I have got a cup of fruity tea with me. This is my second time recording this episode this week. I had recorded it on some annual leave, had this lovely long episode for you, came to edit it today, which is Friday, which is the day this is hopefully going live. Came to edit it in at my lunch break, and I'd filmed quite late at night before, and it was just so dark. I'm recording in a lunch break, so it is lighter, but I've still got the ring light out. We're having to make do. And yeah, got my cup of fruity tea. I have got some handmade knitwear on, not as much as I did when I initially recorded this episode. And I'm just realising that I don't actually know the name of this. I know who it's by. So this shawl is one of Natasha Hornsby, who's also known as Moonstruck Knits. She produced loads of really beautiful patterns and quite a few recently, so you may be familiar. I can't remember which shawl this is, I'll try and put it below, but it's the one with the really big flowers on the border. It's one of her classic mosaic knits. As you'll see, I cut the border a little bit short. I love the mosaic knitting. What I find interesting about her shawls is like some of the rows are very long, and I really enjoy the ones where they're long but they're kind of smaller motifs and patterns. But this motif was enormous, and it was just the time of year, the mood I was knitting it in. I just didn't feel ready to do the big flowers, so you've got like a hint of flowers at the bottom, and I enjoy that. So this is knit mainly in Holsgarn in a few different shades. The main background shade is Nougat, then there is Burnt Ember, I believe, or Gold Crest is the kind of yellowy orangey colour. The purple is Slow, like Slow Gin. You've got a very random bit of hand dyed in there, which is Townhouse Yarns over in Ireland, and I think that's their Spiced Plum colourway. I think that's it. Mainly just the 3 Holsgarn super softs, and then that hand dyed thrown in. And yeah, it's kind of a crescent shape, shallow crescent, and really perfect, because it is a little bit chilly. That's what I'm wearing. Take a sip of tea, and then I will touch on a finished object. Oh, hot tea. Oh, right. So my one and only finished object this week, or this month, scarily, is some spinning. For those who are not so interested in spinning, I promise this will be a relatively quick one. For those who love spinning, I don't have all the stats on this that I normally would, but bear with me. So I have spun this skein. It is 78 grams of, it's a little bit variable, but generally speaking on average a kind of sport to DK weight, probably slightly leaning more on the DK side. It's a 2-ply spun on my Nano E wheel, and what's the reason that I've got less stats on this is partially because, so one of the fibres was a fibre I picked up at Wonderwool Wales a few years ago from Lay Family Yarns, a beautiful braid with white, pink and orange in it, but it didn't have a fibre content label on it, just one of those things in the process of packing up for the show, which I totally didn't mind. So I can't really tell you the fibre content, and then the other bit of fibre, so I spun them from a completely different braid, and that braid was picked up at a pet store of all places, and they didn't have fibre content on that. It feels like merino blended with a little bit of silk, but I don't have that kind of information for you. I was very impatient when I was putting this onto the niddy noddy, and I didn't count the exact number of wraps around the niddy noddy, so I can't give you meterage either. So failed spinner in terms of stats and technical, but in terms of a spin, this is probably one of the better spins I've done. There's definitely a lot of variability in the skein, but there's less areas of over twist, and I'd say I've got areas that are overall it's a much more kind of light, lofty spin than what I've done before. I tend to spin woolen spun, I think. And this was done a kind of a semi-long draw, not completely long draw. I have never really been technically taught spinning. I've just picked stuff up watching YouTube videos, and I kind of just do what feels comfortable and based on the position I can adopt whilst my cat tries to attack my spinning. So it's not very technical, but I'm really, really pleased with the skein. The lighting is actually doing the colours really good justice. The one braid was a lot darker, kind of a cranberry, bits of purple in it, and orange, and then the other was that lighter orange, white and pink, and I think they've just come together beautifully. I now want to start a bit of a project and make several skeins of a similar size of hand spun that will be not quite a gradient but will be like a set. So I'm currently working on a midnight blue one, fibre also unknown, but I will hopefully have some more stats once I finish that skein. So that was my first thing that I finished this month. Now the other thing that is a finished object but not one I can show is a huge amount of time has been spent dyeing and packaging and posting advent calendars. So I've been doing loads of yarn dyeing, which represents a huge body of work, but that is obviously not something I can share here, and I'm sure in the coming month I'm going to continue. I've already spun up bits of my fibre advent for myself, but I will continue to do that, and so there'll be lots of spinning that again I unfortunately won't be able to share with you here on the podcast just yet. I will touch on the on the advent calendar a little bit more towards the end of the episode, because there are going to be some available ready to ship. So keeping to the main knitty content, so when I last recorded this I did it in a really lovely order. I think this time around I'm gonna have to, and I'm looking around because I think I might have even left one of my projects out of the room. Okay, yeah, I left one of my projects out of the room, so it will kind of be a slightly different order to what I'd planned, but that's fine. So something that's taken up a huge amount of time this month that I've really enjoyed, I had really been hoping to get this finished in maybe like the first couple of weeks. I didn't think it would take me long to knit, and it has, which is more representative of my time for knitting at the moment rather than anything else. So what am I talking about? Well, I went to the Oxford yarn store with a very set intention that I wanted to knit the Amy slipover by Sanders Garn. And so I was very good. Whilst I kind of enjoyed the inspiration of all the yarns, I did only purchase yarn for this one project. And I picked up Sanders Garn Tin Pear Gint, which I believe is what the pattern calls for. I picked it up in shade 1053. Picked that up, and then I didn't pick up the Sanders Garn Mohair because instead I really wanted to try Mode at Rowan, which was brand newly released at the time I went to the shop, which was fantastic. Rowan are calling their alpaca haze like a kind of everyday luxury, and that is absolutely the vibe. I love it. This is the kind of, it's like a kind of steely blue colour. It's coming up kind of more brilliant blue on camera than it actually is. It's a little bit smokier than that, a little bit more grey. This is going to be the challenge, guys, recording in the winter months, is kind of getting colours to come up right. So I picked up 5 of each. Now, a little bit of a tale of woe is completely the wrong phrase, but I don't know, one of those kind of like dull moments. I had looked the pattern up online. I could see they got kind of like the instructions and how it's all constructed written out online, so I don't know why I thought this, because I have actively known before that you have to buy the pattern for Sanders Garn at the point when you buy the yarn, and the Oxford Yarn Store does stock the Sanders Garn patterns. But I think because the write-up that I'd seen online was so detailed, I think I just got it stuck in my head that it was a free online pattern. So I got home, got my needles out, got ready to cast on, went online, and then realised there's absolutely no stitch counts written. And then I could see on it, it said, you need to purchase this pattern when you purchase your yarn. I just thought, oh. So, given that I have purchased their yarn, I'm not like, you know, trying to fob them off, but I thought, look, I'm so impatient, I want to cast this on. Let's use the instructions that they have freely of their own will posted online and just guess the stitch counts based on the gauge they've given. And I would love to say a gauge swatch, but no, I just kind of roughly know my gauge on a 4mm needle, which is, yes, it is a 4mm needle I'm working on. So this is kind of an interpretation of their slipover with none of the right stitch counts, I'm sure. But yeah, it's all bunched up on one side, and I'll explain why. But I've knit the whole of the front, the whole of the back. I made a shoulder panel first, like a back panel first, knit that down, then picked up for the shoulders. As I say, all the stitch counts have been a little bit made up. And then what I have interpreted as the pattern is that you then go and pick up the sides and do ribbing down the sides. And I'm just doing that on the second side. Now, the pattern pictures make it look like that ribbing only goes kind of just underneath the bust, and then you cast on stitches to make tails that then tie each side. I am still going to do that, it's just I'm going to do that as a second layer, because I was finding that the edge here, if you imagine that this rib only came to like, I don't know, let's say here, I found that this bit here was just not hanging very nicely. So I'm going to do almost like a double layer of ribbing on the edges, which I think could actually look really chic. And I've done a really nice deep collar. I like when blocking for this to like kind of stand away from my neck a little bit, but let's just see, given that I've kind of bodged this a little bit. But yeah, it's been a really, really enjoyable knit. Lots of knitting flat, which I know isn't everyone's jam. I've quite enjoyed it. I think this is all going to block out beautifully, and I love the way the yarns are holding together. So really happy. So I really hope that I can finish this project probably this weekend. I keep saying this though, I've thought I was going to finish it the last several weekends, and then I just don't get the knitting time in, but hopefully. So that's a project that I've been working on an awful lot. Love the Rowan mode yarn, love working with the tin cardigan. I've worked with the other cardigan base, the thicker one before from Sanders Garn, and really loved that. And what I'll do is when I have finished this, I will do a full review of the project, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how I've selected some of my techniques, particularly the finishing techniques, to try and emulate the design, but also where I varied from the design and why, and the techniques I've chosen there, because I think that could be really interesting. I've definitely learned a lot, so maybe that'll be helpful to other people too. A little sip of tea. So if I pick up my basket again, yeah, quite varied content for this episode, in the sense that I've also got some stuff for you that I showed you in the last episode, which is now getting frogged, which I know some people hate frogging and find it really sad. I don't. I was talking to you in the last episode about, this is not coming up the right shade of purple, you'll have to go check out my last episode for the just, oh, it's really like a warm purple, and this gorgeous grey. These are two yarns I picked up in Edinburgh when I was up there. This grey one is the Siaban, which is spun at the Mill and Wool Centre in Grimsby, North Uist, in the Outer Hebrides, and this is from Lanark Mills. And I was going to knit, I think I'd cast on just the twisted rib of what was going to be a collar, and then I was going to do a bit of colour work. And I think I was saying to you guys I wasn't sure if I was going to do texture and colour work combined or just one, but I think I'm going to run out of yarn for this, so I think this needs to be a frog. I know in my gut that the yarn's not going to do the size of collar that I want it to do, and rather than wait until my heart is broken and I've spent hours and hours on it, given I don't have very much knitting time at the moment, I think I just need to call it sooner rather than later. So we will make something else beautiful out of that yarn, but that's another project that has had a little bit of work on it this last month or so. I also said in the last episode that I was going to cast on with 3 yarns that I had kind of just sat in stash with an intention for a little while now. One of those was by Laxton's Sheep Soft DK, which is 100% British wool, blue face Leicester mash and blend, and it's in this gorgeous navy colourway, colour Kettlewell. And I was going to combine that with Amarisu, which is the hand-dyed yarn company of Walnut yarn stores out in Japan. I don't know the colour of this, but I know it's their Sprint Sport base. With the colourway Hip Hip from Ainsworth and Prynne on their mohair sock base. 4-ply Sport DK, but I want to combine them, and I ideally want to combine them into a short sleeve version of Coco More Knitwear's Dover sweater, which she's released in the last kind of couple of months. I bought it the minute it came out and I've been really dying to cast it on, so I think these will combine into, I can't decide if it's going to be colour work or stripes, but there's going to be a colourful version of the Dover sweater coming, and I've balled all the yarn up already, as you can see. That's the other thing, in our new house I haven't yet found my ideal caking station, winding station, so lots has been done by hand. I feel like I'm whipping through these, so do excuse the pace, but the next project I've been working on, but it's only a little bit of work, is this, which is like a smoky purpley grey twisted rib slipover. I think I said in my last episode, it's slipover season for me, big time. That's why I'm gutted it's taken me so long to finish that other one, because there's just, everyone's been wearing them at work and I want to be wearing mine. So this is using an alpaca wool blend fluffy lace weight yarn that I picked up in Japan. It's from a brand called Suminono. Yes, so I do have one. Sonomono. All the details are in Japanese, other than to say it's 25 grams, colourway 126, and I think it's 75% alpaca and then 25% wool. And I'm holding that with a one-off batch of yarns that I dyed for myself with this project in mind, in this kind of smoky purple colourway, so the two are combining really beautifully. I'm completely self-drafting this slipover. It's kind of raglan style, and then I will probably finish the edges with I-cord bind off. And I'm currently using 3.75mm needles. But hopefully a little bit more to show on that one, and again a little bit more information in the next episode, when I can kind of talk you through again some of the details I'm including, some of the considerations that have crossed my mind when making this slipover. I tried to keep that all very neat and that didn't work. Right, I'll have another sip of tea in a minute, but first I wanted to show you this being my George's sweater. Now, for long-term viewers of the podcast, you will know I started this, oh my goodness, like over a year ago, which is kind of slightly crazy. This was going to be one of my bridesmaids' jumpers for our wedding, and I didn't complete them because the colour just didn't quite match despite my best efforts. The colours just didn't quite go. So I'm now finishing this, but for me, and I finished the first sleeve. I need to decide whether I actually want to do some sleeve shaping after having just knit it completely straight. I put about this much onto the sleeve in the last couple of weeks. This project is knit on 5mm needles. The yarn is Knitting for Olives, merino and mohair, both in the colourway bottle green. Be careful of how the colours look online versus in person is all I'd say on that, but loving the fabric that it's creating overall. And the George's sweater is by Joanna Gerrich, if I'm pronouncing her surname correctly, also known as Calibri by Joanna on Instagram, and this is essentially like a beautiful raglan style jumper but with a completely open V back that then ties at the bottom. I re-knit the body twice on this, so that's part of the reason it's also taken me a while, and I'm doing completely different ties than what Joanna did in hers. She did this beautiful big maximalist bow, and I'm going for something a little bit more minimalist with more like kind of kerchief knot at the bottom. So yeah, so I just need to knit the other sleeve, which now I've knit one. I don't know about you guys, but I always find the second one goes faster, particularly as I can count the number of rows I need to do and then just tally them as I go. And I find it goes a lot quicker. And then I just need to do an I-cord bind off around the whole body and down the back. So lots and not a lot to do on that all at the same time. 5mm needles, it should fly, but let's just see what happens. But really great to have it back on the needles. I'm so excited, because that's going to be another one I really look forward to wearing. Oh, I needed a proper tea break there just to settle my voice a bit. I'm not used to talking on these episodes as much anymore. The final thing, so I was going through all my current whips, and actually for the first time in a really long time I've really begun to reduce my whip count. It's not something I necessarily have a big thing about, how many whips I have or not, and I don't even get too cross with myself for whips that have been on the needles for ages, but there are times where I go, oh, that project, and I kind of remember it, and there's also kind of the storage element. So I'm always conscious of how many whips I have, even if it's not kind of a self-judgmental consciousness. All of that to say, one of the whips I've had on the needles for ages and I would also love done relatively soon because I want to wear it is my Big Love cardigan by Anchor Strick. I have essentially done the whole top of it, where you would then join under the arms to start knitting the body as a whole. This is a textured kind of broken ribbish style stitch pattern with a massive shawl collar, and I'm knitting this in a strand of Wool Dreamers Manchalope in the kind of burnt orange colourway, and then I'm holding it with a strand of Holst Garn's Coast Base, which has got silk in it, in the colourway Chianti. So they kind of look very odd when they're not held together, but as they're knitting up, I think they're knitting up beautifully. But because of the unspun and how that is initially caked up, etc., I'm having to kind of uncake that and then make it into separate balls. There's a lot of like prep that's going on, a lot of dividing yarn up, a lot of little balls of yarn all over the place. It's not very portable. And also, whilst I'm in theory, according to the pattern, I'm ready to knit the body as a whole, actually I think I'm going to need to add a lot more length. I think my row gauge is probably off by quite a bit, because I don't know about you, but that just does not look big enough for an armhole on what is meant to be an oversized cardigan. So that's the other thing that's putting me off, is because I hate getting to a point in a pattern where I think I'm on to the next stage and I'm not. But it's also taking up a needle and I really want to wear it, so hopefully we can press it forwards. I think this has been knit on 4mm as well. And I think, I can't remember which size of the pattern off the top of my head, but again, when I've got a bit more progress on it, I think the next episode I will probably do a slightly longer episode, whenever it is, and try and do a bit more of an in-depth digest on some of these projects for you, including sizes, etc. The final thing I was going to say to you before I kind of get on to advent calendars and little life updates for those that are interested, is that I've actually been frogging quite a few projects recently. Now some people will be going, oh no! There's one project in particular that I spoke about frogging before and people were like, no, please don't. I have, because guys, for actually a really positive reason, I have been wearing my knitwear every single day for the last 2 months, and I will continue to do so for the next 4 or 5 months, and it brings me so much joy. I love coming in to this room and picking out the pieces that I want to wear each day. Like, I just love it, and I want to continue that, but there are pieces that I will go to time and time and time again, and I know why I go to them, and there are other pieces that just don't get the wear, and they're normally in yarn that I really love. It's just there's something about the way I've knitted the design that just doesn't work for me. So one that got frogged, so I therefore can't show it to you, is my thin air sweater by Lily Kate Designs and Lily Kate Makes. Her and I had a lovely conversation in the comments on one of my videos about why that design didn't work out the way I wanted it to, and it was completely my error. I knitted it, I didn't knit the cuffs, I didn't knit the sleeves as long as I should have, and I didn't knit the cuffs double thickness like she says to in the pattern, and that means it then didn't hang off my shoulders in the way I wanted it to. So I love the yarn. It was knit up in John Armand Textiles, oh gosh, I was so confident then rattling it off, and I've literally just lost the name of it. I know the colourways. It was Wondrous Place and Ordinary Joe, Yarnadelic Sport, there we go, that was the base, and I absolutely loved it. It flew off the needles because it was just so beautiful to work with. So I frogged that, and I will make something that I really love wearing from the yarn. And I do want to make another one of the thin air sweater, but actually follow the instructions this time and not think I'm so smart. Because I'm not. These designers are incredibly talented, and there's a reason why they've done things the way they've done them. So I frogged that. The other thing I'm going to frog is this, which is my Medina top by Han Rimmon. I knit this over a couple of years ago, and there's just so many things wrong with it, as you can already see on camera. Neckline, one sleeve is bigger than the other, which would be fixable, apart from like the colour work also doesn't sit in the right place. It's got this beautiful like Moroccan style colour work, and the main yarn is Ficlana Saga in this like mushroom colour, and it's just so soft, it's just so beautiful, and I want to make it into something I wear. This is a bottom up top, and I'm repeatedly finding issues. I found a workaround that does work for me, but I only discovered that after knitting this top, so this is going to get frogged. Something else that's going to get frogged, which was just so lovely to knit, but I enjoyed the process and now it needs to be something else, is this enormous asymmetric scarf. I just don't wear asymmetric scarves or shawls. It's just not my style anymore. I knit this mainly, to be honest, as a process knit. It's knit entirely from hand-dyed yarn / undyed yarn that I got from the Peak District when I was there with my husband. And I love the process, and it's got lots of memories, but I'd really like to turn this colour in particular into a scarf that I actually will wear, maybe like a little neckerchief style, Sophie scarf style. And then this middle yarn, I think someone else might get more enjoyment from than I do. It's just not particularly my wheelhouse anymore. And then we can always find room for undyed yarn in projects. The other interesting thing is a moth got at it. I don't know if you guys can see just here, there's a hole. And I could fix it, I definitely could. But again, given the background and given how much I haven't worn it, I just don't think it's worth it. So this will also get frogged, and both of those, weirdly, will make me very happy. So guys, that is all my like knitty updates. I've kind of tried to share with you kind of some of my thoughts, particularly in that, got a bit of fluff, particularly in the latter part there, talking about why I'm frogging things. I'm definitely in like a kind of sorting, hibernating kind of mode. So hopefully more knitting time will come with that. I have got some socks on my mind that I want to knit. I've got so many knitting plans and I'm just not the time, but we're hoping to flip that on its head. One thing that will free up a lot of time that is now done, as I mentioned before, is the advent calendar. I put this up as a pre-order and I put up loads of different options. The options are now slightly more narrowed down, but I will have 1 or 2 advents going up as ready to ship. So if you are interested, if you haven't heard my spiel on my advents before, the like one-liner is essentially I've tried to make them as affordable as possible. There are both 12 and 24 day options. I say that, I think most of the options going in will probably be 12 day, and I am maybe not including so many of the kind of extras, and I've gone quite low-key on the packaging and stuff just because, again, this makes them more affordable, and the kind of the treat hopefully is the kind of the colour and the fibre. I've done fibre advents as well as yarn advents this year, which I've really enjoyed. I've learned a lot. I've got loads of different fibre bases in there, which is really exciting. So yes, there will be some ready to ship going up. I'll drop the link to the website down below. I kind of don't want to commit on this episode. She says that. No, I should. Okay, there's going to be at least 2 12-day fibre advents going in. There may be more that come into the shop over the coming week. Then there will be potentially 1 12 times 20 gram mini skein one, and potentially a 12 times 50 gram skein one. If I'd had more time, I would have dyed a lot more of each colour, but I was on such a time crunch and I needed to just make sure I got out the orders, the pre-orders that I already had. So there's going to be there's definitely like extras in that, but they're harder to define. I'm probably not making any sense. In terms of a life update, well, I mean, really, you can just tell from my rambling and me having to re-record this episode things are just quite busy, which I think they are for everybody. As I said, I'm really getting into hibernation mode, but we're out and about seeing friends quite a lot the weekends, which is lovely. Beginning to really settle into our new place, which is great. My husband's really settled into his job, and the 2 cats are settling in, so it's a big period of settling, and then I should imagine hibernating over here. But would love to hear how you all are. What are you up to? What are you knitting on? What are you working on? How have you been? Do let me know down below in the comments, because I'd love to hear. And with that, I will leave you and say stay safe and happy knitting, and I'll see you soon.